All right, Asher, welcome in. How you doing?
Yeah, hi, how you doing? Okay.
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. Are you at least 18 and are you a believer?
Yeah, and yeah.
Sure. And which God do you believe in?
Yahweh, you could say. I just wanted to say about the conversation you were having with the other guy before. It sounded like you were painting it as if he lies and he has to pay a fine, and she lies and she gets stoned. But if she lied, if she hasn't just lied, she's also fornicated, right?
So do you think it's good that fornicators get stoned?
Well, I mean, good. What is good?
Is there
If
a
that's what
is
the
there a
law is.
law in the Bible where men get stoned for not being virgins?
No.
Oh, only women. Funny how misogynistic this law seems to be. So you think it's a good law that women get stoned for not being virgins, but men don't get stoned?
Yeah, well, men get stoned for adultery, though, don't they?
Well, they both get stoned for adultery. We're talking about virginity.
That's wrong.
So there's no fairness in the virginity law code. It's also that you failed to address that half of the women that would have been stoned would have been actually
Well,
innocent.
this is the thing.
So
This is the thing.
what I,
Yeah, but realistically,
so what I'd like you to do is realistically explain to me how it's a good thing that innocent women, at least 50% of them, would have been innocently executed under this law. Can you
now
explain
I'm
how
going to
that's
ask you a
good?
question. Now I'm going to ask you a question.
No, you're going to answer my
50% of
question. So I want you to answer, is it a good thing that innocent women get stoned under this law?
so you tell me that 50% of women don't bleed, right, on their first time.
Yep.
So you telling me that 50% of the time, when people got married and they had intercourse and she didn't bleed, half of the women who got married were taken in front of the elders and stoned to death.
No, because a lot of times they
Yeah,
wouldn't have been
because
accused. So
it just didn't happen like that, did it?
it's kind of funny how you asked me a question and then you didn't let me answer it. So you only got drug in for the
Yeah.
execution if your husband wanted to accuse you of not being a virgin. So it's not the case that every man who lay with a woman and she didn't bleed is going to drag her before the court and say, hey, she's not actually a virgin. But if that thing does happen, then it's true that the proof of her being a virgin is the bloody sheet. And we'll do this since I've got you up here. All the women in the comments, put a 1 in the comments if you didn't bleed the first time you did the deed. I want to see it. And Asher,
Yeah,
go ahead and
I
watch
agree.
the comments. I want to see all the ones. A lot of women that would have been stoned.
Oh, I agree. I agree. Not
Great.
everyone believes when they
So
first have.
do you
But
think
what
it's
I'm saying
ever a
is,
good thing
you
to
think this is
execute innocent victims?
no, not at all. But
Okay, so
that's not the
this law
point of
was
the
not
law.
good then, was it?
Did God say execute innocent women? What
Yeah,
did He say?
he did.
No, no.
So
What the point? The point is
we'll try
execute
this
the
again.
innocent one.
Asher, you asked me a question. Did you want me to actually answer the question?
Go on, mate.
You asked me if the law is calling for the execution of innocent women. The answer is
If
yes. The law is calling for the execution of innocent women
how is the law calling for the execution of innocent women?
because the
If the
test
point of
by
the,
me,
okay, sorry. So let me just. Can I
I don't
just?
know how you listen. When you ask questions, you don't just keep talking. You notice how when I ask you a question, I shut up? So,
I understand, but I hadn't finished my question.
you did. You literally finished your question. The way that the law is calling for the execution of innocent women is that the only evidence you need to execute the woman is the bloody sheet. If there's no blood in that sheet, she gets executed. Do you see?
I think it's very unlikely that you could just bring a white sheet to the elders and they'd stone a woman to death on
It's
that
quite
evidence.
likely. It's written in the law.
Yeah, but there was a court
Asher,
system.
it doesn't matter
Just
how
bring a,
likely it is. This is the way the
just
law was
bring a white,
written.
just bring a white sheet to a load of old men. Wouldn't be evidence to stone a woman
It
to death.
was evidence. Do you know how this ritual works?
No chance. Go on, mate. Tell me where you're getting this from. Where you're getting the evidence that this is how the ritual works.
Because
Like
that's
where
not only
you've got.
not only is that not what the book not only is that what the book says, but it's also written about by other people from the time period.
Yeah,
So the evidence, since you weren't listening the first time I read it, I'll read it for you. Says in verse 16, the father of the young woman shall say to the elders, I gave my daughter in marriage to this man, but he dislikes her. Now he's made up charges against her, saying, I did not find evidence of your daughter's virginity. But here is the evidence of my daughter's virginity. Then they shall spread out the cloth before the elders of the town. The elders of that town shall take the man and punish him, if there's blood on it. If, however, the charge is true, and that evidence of the young woman's virginity was not found, then they shall bring the young woman out to the entrance of her father's house, and the men of the town shall stone her to death. So This
Okay.
was a ritual in the ancient world where they would consummate the marriage at the wedding. This didn't happen after everybody went home. They would go into a tent or into a small dwelling, and people would already have a bed set up and waiting for them. Typically, it was done by the parents. The parents would then collect the sheet afterwards. Sometimes it wasn't the parents. Sometimes it were the attendants of the bride and the groom.
You're making stuff
And
up.
I'm not making stuff up.
Yeah, tell me where it's from then.
Well, first of all, it's in the Bible. Did you hear that part?
It's in the Bible that they'd have intercourse at the wedding, and the parents would stand around and wait to.
No, not that part. But you can read about that. But you can read about that part. But you can read about that part in the Talmud and in other ancient Near Eastern texts because
so in the Talmud,
because as it turns out, it was widely practiced in the ancient Near East, and there are people groups that still practice this today. Are you aware of that?
So what does the Talmud say about this law?
The Talmud says that
Does it say that a man can just bring a white sheet?
the Talmud says that if there is no blood on the sheet, that she is presumed to not be a virgin, and it is up to the attendants to verify the sheet if it's not from the parents. But
Right.
it's also irrelevant because
there's a process here, isn't there?
what we're talking about here is whether or not there's blood on the sheet. Who
Yeah, that
checks?
is a piece of evidence.
Who checks the sheet? Who collects the sheet? None of that's important. The important thing is whether or not there's blood on the sheet. Do you understand that part?
I understand that as a piece of evidence, but what I'm
Okay.
saying
Is there any other evidence presented in this law code?
No, it's simply not true that in this law code, but there's a lot of
Okay.
evidence
So in the
from
Bible, the only evidence you need to execute a woman is the bloody sheet, right?
That's a lie because there's a practical application.
We'll try this again. In the Bible, according to the biblical text, the
Well,
only
the
thing you
Bible
need
says
to execute a
Bible
woman is a non-bloody sheet, right?
Okay, I'll say yes to that, but will you
Okay.
also admit
So then
there's a
the only
practical
evidence that you need to
application?
execute somebody innocently is a faulty piece of evidence, which is the non-bloody sheet. Do you understand?
No, because there's a practical application of this. There's a council, there's the elders have to make an actual decision. It's not simply a man presents a white sheet. Well, let's
That's what the Bible says.
No, that's all the detail the Bible provides, but there's a lot of
That's all you need. This is the only law code.
No.
This is the only law code.
So what is the Talmud then? What's the point of
The Talmud came hundreds of years later.
So when you say the Talmud came hundreds of years later, it was written down hundreds of years later, but was it produced hundreds of years later?
Yep.
Or was this oral law being spoken about well before it was actually written down and codified?
No, the oldest parts of the Talmud only go back to about 100 BCE.
The oldest parts of the Talmud only get written down. Do you know why it's called the oral law?
Yes, I know why it's called the oral law. And do you know who the
oldest?
Do you know who the oldest quotation in the Talmud is?
Go on.
One of the oldest quotations in the Talmud is Gamliel. He lived in the 1st century BCE. If it was quoting people that lived in the 5th century BCE, then I might say, yeah, it's recording stuff from the 5th century, but it's not. The oldest quotations we have from the oral law don't come anywhere near the quotations from Deuteronomy.
Okay, so Gamaliel was a rabbi, yeah?
Yep.
Or a Jewish elder. Did he have a teacher, and his teacher have a teacher, and his teacher have a teacher?
Yeah, but they're not quoted in the Talmud.
Well, that's fine, but were they all producing law codes, and did they have like a Jewish law before the Talmud?
Oh, there were definitely oral laws that were being created.
Did they have a practical application of the law that wasn't just white sheet stoning them to death?
Yes, but we have no evidence that any of that existed when the Bible text was given, and it also
That's fine.
And it also wouldn't supersede the biblical text. And that's the problem that you're having right now, is you're suggesting that there are additional laws that you're assuming people created, and those additional laws would then supersede the biblical laws.
It's not about supersession. It's about the fact that
so we'll just try this again, Asher, from the very top.
Wait.
If we're a Bible-believing people and a woman doesn't bleed on her wedding night, can I take her before the court, present the evidence of the non-bloody sheet, and have her executed? Can I do that?
You can take her before the court, but there's definitely a process.
That was a yes or no question. If I lay with a woman on my wedding night and she does not bleed on that sheet, can I take her before the court, have the sheet presented, and have her executed? Can I do that?
It's possible, yeah. If the
Yeah, it is
evidence,
possible the way the law is written. I agree. Yeah, so no amount of
yeah, it's
adding
possible,
nonsense to it makes this any better.
but
So
adding
this is
nonsense to
why
it.
you should just be
But this is the
honest with
thing.
what the book
Well, no, I'm
actually
being honest.
says.
I'm being honest because
You're
you're telling me
embarrassing yourself is what you're
you're
doing.
telling me that 50% of these women don't bleed on their wedding night, and I agree with you. It's definitely not 100% of women say hymen break on their wedding night or bleed on their wedding night. But to say that every time someone's hymen didn't bleed on their wedding night, these people didn't know that the hymen could break before someone has intercourse, it's just an ignorant statement.
I never said
So
that.
of course, so what?
So, I don't know if you're aware of this, but as it turns out, we're talking about what God in the Bible said. We're not talking about what you are conjecturing people to believe about the ancient time period. So the only test you need
Did God write
to
this? Did God write this?
the only test you need to determine if a woman gets executed is that bloody sheet.
No.
Yes, that's what the book says. That's literally what the book says.
You think this law code is completely exhaustive? They just had nothing else. There's no process to it. Exactly as it says in the book. There's nothing else that when this law was actually being practically applied, there was nothing else to it. There was no other.
All right, let me illustrate how stupid this talking point is. So imagine a man and a woman go and they consummate their marriage, and then there's no blood on that sheet. How does she prove she's innocent now?
Sorry?
How does she prove that she's innocent? They go to consummate the marriage. She doesn't bleed on the sheet. And then they go to the council of the elders. How does she prove she's innocent?
Well, I'm sure there was like character witness and all sorts. How else?
Character witness is useless. We're talking about whether or not she bled on a sheet. So she's accused of not being a virgin because she didn't bleed on the sheet. What is the evidence that she could bring that would validate that she actually is a virgin?
We're not talking about blood on the sheet. We're talking about whether she's fornicated before she's had intercourse.
And the proof of that is whether or not she bled on the sheet. So the question is, if she goes before the court, what is the evidence that she can bring to prove her innocence?
Well, this is the thing. In the ancient world, what evidence do you bring to prove or disprove a crime? It's testimony, it's character witness,
there's
family.
There's no testimony of being a virgin. You can't put somebody under lock and key and monitor every moment of their life. So what you can't do is bring a character witness in and say, well, this person who knows my daughter said that she wouldn't have done the thing, and they're going to accept that as evidence. That's ridiculous.
In a tight-knit community, if this girl has
That's not how that works. That's not at all how that works. You're just making stuff up because you're coping now.
No, character witness wasn't a thing in the ancient world. Is that what you're saying?
No, character witness is not evidence.
Well, it had to be evidence in the ancient world.
It was not.
Have fingerprints, didn't have CCTV. It wasn't.
Character witness has nothing to do with proving whether or not you were actually a virgin. That's why there's this sheet of the test.
So you're telling me that these people who you admit knew that the hymen didn't break every time?
No. At the time this was written, they didn't know that. That's why I keep telling you. Hundreds of years later, they figured it out. Same with the Greeks, same with the Egyptians, same with the rest of the ancient Near Eastern cultures and the Mediterranean cultures. They figured it out eventually, but at the time that these law codes were written, they didn't actually know that.
Okay, let me ask you a question. What kind of activities break hymens that aren't sex?
Oh, there's lots of different activities. Riding a horse could do it. Riding a donkey could do it. But that's also irrelevant. We're talking about what the evidence is. We're talking about what the evidence is that you can bring to court to demonstrate that you're actually a virgin. Because according to the law code, if you get accused of not being a virgin, you will get executed if you do not provide the bloody sheet. Do you understand this?
I understand that as a piece of evidence that was provided.
Then tell me, what is the other evidence?
Well, there could be a lot of pieces of evidence. I'd love to see.
Name one of them.
Like I said, could be character witness.
That's not evidence.
In the ancient world, what else is evidence? Let's for
exactly.
example.
You know what would have been much better? You know what would be much better is to not have a law in which the evidence is faulty, that it could only literally apply to 50% of the women, and then they get executed for it. Because even if the test wasn't faulty, it'd still be ridiculous to stone a woman for not being a virgin. especially when there's no law to stone a man for not being a virgin.
Well, that's a good point.
And you know,
But
they
why-
could just
why
they
do
could
you-
do a
why-
Numbers chapter 5 test and bring her before the Lord. You notice that they didn't do that. They could have said, listen, if you suspect that she wasn't a virgin, you take her to the priest. The priest puts either like a curse or a potion on her, and the Lord will determine if this person is either guilty or unguilty. That they could have done that. But what they but what they didn't do is that. What they did is they said, if there's blood on a sheet, then she's not guilty. If there's no blood, she's guilty.
Can you tell me why it's wrong to stone a woman for fornication?
Oh, so you think it's good to stone women for fornication?
Let me finish. But make a man pay a fine if he lied.
So do you think it's a good thing that women get stoned for not being virgins?
I'm a believer, so whatever it says.
Asher, I need you to harness a little bit of Holy Spirit power here and answer my question. Do you believe that it's a good thing to stone women who aren't virgins on their wedding night?
This shouldn't happen today, but you know my.
As a yes or no question, do you think it's a good thing that non-virgins will get stoned for not being virgins?
Not anymore, but you know my stand. I have to stick to the.
Was it a good thing when they did it back then?
Whatever is commanded, I have a standard. I say that it's good. Yeah.
Okay, so you'll stand by. So you think it's a good thing that the women got stoned back then on faulty evidence for not being virgins?
No,
at least
you
stood by your text. Do you want to read? You want to read another one with me?
I hope everyone who got stoned was actually guilty of the crime. But yeah,
I hope nobody ever got stoned, but that's irrelevant. So you want to read more of the Bible with me?
Go on, mate.
Fantastic. Have you read 2 Samuel 24?
2 Samuel 24. You're not going to do 1 Samuel 15:3?
Nope.
No, go on. 2 Samuel 24.
I could put it on the screen.
Okay, yeah, you tell me what happened.
Yep. So David takes a census of the people, and David realizes that he committed
just before we start, do you believe this happened?
No, I don't believe this happened, but that's irrelevant. Okay. So David took a census of the people. You believe it happened, and God sends a punishment because of it. And the punishment that God chose was that he was going to send a pestilence. In verse 15, it says, the Lord sent a pestilence on Israel from the morning until the appointed time, and 70,000 people died from Dan to Beersheba. So do you think it was a good thing that 70,000 Israelites were killed in a pestilence for David's sin?
Well, it's one or two things here, isn't it?
That's a yes or no question.
Wait. Let me just explain, please.
Asher, what I need you to do is provide a yes or a no, and then you can explain your yes or a no. So stop being a coward and say yes or no.
Well, not being a coward. Okay, so whatever God commands.
So we'll try this again. Yes or no, was it a good thing that 70,000 people got executed for the sin that David committed? Go.
Yes, and let me.
He said it. At least he was honest and said it. So now explain to me how it's a good thing that 70,000 Israelites were executed for David's sin.
I'll tell you what. It's either one or two things.
These believers will say anything.
Let me just explain. It's one or two things. Either God exists and God is the arbiter of what's good and evil.
Oh, so you're just going to pivot hard. What a cowardly pivot.
Wait. God commanded it and it's good, or
what a cowardly pivot. I knew it was going to happen.
Wait. Or God doesn't exist and this didn't even happen.
What's the definition of justice?
Yeah, you tell me. It's a good question.
The definition of justice is when you get the reward or the punishment for your behavior. Is it ever just to punish a person for a crime that somebody else committed?
Yeah, that's your definition of justice, right?
Asher, I asked you a very easy question. Is it ever just to punish an individual for a sin that somebody else committed?
I'll answer that. It's never just for us as humans to take out the punishment for someone else.
So it's just when God does it.
Yes, exactly.
So then you don't believe in objective morals or definitions.
I couldn't give, when people throw this objective morality thing, I couldn't give a toss. Yes, whatever God gives, that's what's good. And whatever he says is evil, that's what's evil.
Is there anything God could ever do that would be bad?
No.
Okay, so if God told you, if God said, Asher, I want you to go,
do this.
If God said, Asher, I want you to go to your local orphanage, collect all the children from your local orphanage, and throw them into an incinerator, you'd have to say that was a good thing, won't you?
So would you if you believed in God.
Is it yes or no? Is that a good thing?
You would think that as well if you believed in God.
Check his hard drives. This guy, check his basement, check his hard drive. This guy's literally willing to throw children into incinerators as long as his God tells him. You guys are sick. You're the reason why we do these lives. This is the most disgusting thing I have ever heard. Most Christians will at least try to find a way to say no, but listen, at least you were honest. Thanks for being honest with us. We're going to drop you now. And we're going to call the police. Everyone, someone track down what country he's in and go ahead and call the police, guys.